Since the overthrow of communism in the former Yugoslavia, its most significant architectural landmark has been neglected and left as a ruin. Having endured war and rapid political and social change, the Memorial Cemetery in Mostar presently faces its greatest threat, as neo-fascists organize to obliterate the memorial and all it represents. A small group of local residents and activists are fighting to protect the cemetery and its anti-fascist history for future generations, but with the absence of political will and the possibility of intimidation and attack, the necropolis defenders face an uphill struggle. In 1941, Yugoslavia was invaded by Axis forces, and the city of Mostar was created into an Axis puppet state. The city was besieged by German and Italian fascists, as well as Croatian nationalists known as Ustaz, who committed widespread terror and violence against the civilians. Many atrocities were committed by the occupying armies against Serbs, Jews, Roma, and other ethnic populations in an effort to eliminate these groups altogether. By August of 1941, an organized, multi-ethnic popular resistance composed of anti-fascist and partisan rebel groups began to rise up against the Axis occupation. The city of Mostar was a central gathering point for conferences held by Yugoslav communists, and became a surprisingly strong force of anti-fascist resistance during the war. The Red City, as it was called, had a population of 18,000 residents, of which 6,000 actively participated in the partisan resistance which disrupted the Axis hold over the city. In May 1942, the resistance fighters killed 3 leaders of the Ustaz Croatian nationalists, who then retaliated by unleashing a more brutal campaign of terror. The Ustaz held entire villages hostage and graphically executed civilians in public until the rebels surrendered. Over 1,000 Mostar residents were publicly executed by the Axis forces and their Croatian collaborators during this period. This terrorism continued until February 14, 1945, when Mostar was finally liberated by the Yugoslav 8th Dalmatian Partisan Corps in Operation Mostar, where up to 500 partisans died in the final battle. The importance and significance of Mostar as an anti-fascist stronghold and seat of resistance led the municipality and Yugoslav government to build a memorial honoring the sacrifice of soldiers who fell in battle defending the city. Bogdan Bogdanović, the Serbian artist who designed the memorial, sought to create much more than a sculpture or a landscape, but envisioned an entire necropolis akin to those found in the ancient Middle East. He believed that such an atmosphere would imbue the site with a sense of timelessness and hallowed antiquity. Work on the project began in 1960, when 11,000 square meters of rock were removed from the side of a local hill in Mostar using dynamite. Rubble left over from the war was brought up onto the memorial site to create stone carvings along its terrace feature. These small sculptures, comprised of over 12,000 pieces of limestone, were designed by Croatian artists and were installed with the help and effort of civic volunteer groups from across Yugoslavia, who saw their work in the project as part of their national patriotic duty. The layout of the monument begins with a long curved cobblestone walkway which leads up to the hill from the base, then splitting into 2 sections around what used to be a cascading water feature. This style of walkway is thought to be a reflection of the ancient cobblestone walkways found in the city of Mostar itself. After the fountain, the paths converge once more, where they lead to 5 tiers of wide terraces built on the side of the hill. Along the terraces are 630 stones engraved with the names of fallen soldiers, of which 560 are partisan fighters whose remains are physically interred at the site. The remaining 70 stones are symbolic for those whose remains were never found. For many, the memorial symbolizes ethnic unity, but the stones are not marked with any indication of the ethnic diversity among the fighters, other than what can be inferred from the names of the fighters, which range from Jewish, Serb, Croat, Bosniak, and so on. The design of the monument was quite unique for its time, bearing no religious, nationalist, or even socialist imagery. Nor is there any overt war imagery, such as fighters, heroes, or suffering. Instead, the memorial is constituted through cosmic imagery related to the dualistic nature of life and death, creation and destruction. The memorial references the universal aesthetic of symmetry and makes use of the primordial elements stone, earth, air, fire, and sky. At the middle of the top terrace, there is a fountain feature from which water flows to the bottom and collects in a large pool at the base of the hill. The focal point of this section is a large cosmological sundial, which Bogdanovich says is central in the meaning of the memorial. In using universal symbols of the elements, of the sun, planets, and moon, the monument becomes close to everyone and succeeds in imposing itself as an authentic element of space. He often referred to the cemetery as his necropolis, or city of the dead, where not only is the structure of the metaphorical city important, but also the location of it. Overt attempts were made in the siting of the necropolis to create the feeling of entering a portal to the greater cosmos. The chosen location for the monument, on the slope of a large mountain, can be thought of as part of allowing the fallen fighters to be able to directly see and commune with Mostar. As one researcher put it, for Bogdanovich, it was more important how the monument looked at the city rather than how the people looked at the monument. The unveiling ceremony, which was delayed due to an earthquake in the region, took place on September 25, 1965, to mark the 20th anniversary of Tito withdrawing partisan troops from the liberated Mostar in 1945. Tito himself inaugurated the memorial's opening to the public with the following address. In various countries that I have visited, I saw many monuments at which I have laid the wreaths, yet such a beautiful and such a magnificent monument as it is this one here, I have never seen elsewhere. This is truly a masterpiece of our architecture, of our artists. The memorial became a site of large ceremonial gatherings and quickly became a very popular attraction in Yugoslavia, with people from all over the country and the world coming to visit. It reached the peak of popularity during the 1984 Olympics in Sarajevo, which brought floods of tourists to the region. Bogdanovich was filled with great satisfaction to discover the various ways that people interfaced with the memorial. This was a sentiment that was captured well by two Slavic writers, who added that the surrealist-inspired memorial complex that fluctuated between architecture, land art, and sculpture emerged as an important ingredient in Mostar's urban life. Citizens of Mostar today recall that the memorial used to be a park, a playground, beautiful to walk through, a place for picnic, and that some of them learned how to swim in the little circular pond. Nicknamed Partiza, the familiarity of the memorial is captured in the everyday language of citizens. Sad Dulic, a theater director and head of the National Association of Anti-Fascists, added that the necropolis is more than a cemetery. This is our Statue of Liberty, our triumphal arch, our Taj Mahal. It is a celebration of life and Mostar. It was built as a city of the dead, mirroring the city of the living, for a city that has lost so much. With the overthrow of communism, the dismantling of Yugoslavia, and the onset of the Bosnia War of the 1990s, the memorial began to fall into extreme disrepair and neglect. But during and after the war, it was also struck with bombs, set on fire, looted, attacked, and heavily vandalized. Some locals even claim that it was the first landmark that was targeted with bombs when they began to fall in 1992. This memorial, which once stood as a proud symbol of nationalist and ethnic unity, was now in a state of decline with the onset of ethnic conflict in the region. By the end of the war, the monument was left in a severe state of destruction, with many of the site's elements either stolen or destroyed. When Bogdanovich visited Mostar to survey the extent of the damages to his creation, he related the loss of the monument to his own demise. The only thing I could still wish would be to create a secret niche to the left of the entrance gate to accommodate my future urn. However, it seems like I will not be in the company of my friends that way. The gravestones have cold-bloodedly and sadistically been taken away and crushed in a stone grinder. There is a significant amount of evidence to suggest that the ongoing vandalism has been carried out by nationalist and fascist groups. While much of the graffiti appears to be senseless vandalism, there are also explicit messages left behind. In 2016, for example, graffiti was written in Croatian, which translated to English as, "I am Ustash, my father is communist. I will kill my father in the name of Jesus Christ." This text was flanked by the Ustash symbol on the right, and the Nazi swastika on the left. As far as graffiti goes, the Ustaz symbol is tantamount to the Nazi swastika, as the Ustaz regime was essentially an Axis puppet state and heavily influenced by the Nazi invaders. The site has been generally unmaintained, with graffiti on the walls, trash scattered everywhere, shrubs overgrown, smashed stone markers, and water damage throughout. None of the fountains are in working order, and vandals continue to subvert efforts at restoration. There are no local signs, planned tours, or promotional advertisements indicating that the site even exists. In fact, over the years, the site has become somewhat of a dangerous location for visitors. In 2017, 20 masked assailants attacked an international student group on a tour of the complex. Today, when Dulich and other anti-fascists visit the site to lay flowers, they need police protection as there have been previous clashes with fascist groups on commemoration days. It can be dangerous to even talk about the necropolis now, never mind visit it. But no matter how dilapidated or threatening the site became, visitors could always find wreaths, flowers, and other items of commemoration that were recently placed before their arrival. Community groups and local activists continue to work to restore and rehabilitate the memorial, with a notable attempt made in 2008 to 2010 with a €17,000 grant from the Netherlands and Norway. This came shortly after the Bosnian government declared in 2006 the cemetery to be a national monument. And as of 2018, there have been significant attempts to restore the sanctity of the memorial and rehabilitate its place in historical memory. On May 10th that year, Europe Day celebrations were held at the Partisan Cemetery, featuring a massive light show and cultural events. In 2020, further restoration plans were introduced to rehabilitate the site and make it more accessible to visitors. However, neglect, destruction, and vandalism continue to undermine these efforts with no sign of abatement. The most devastating act of vandalism took place on June 14, 2022, when every single one of the stone memorial markers were smashed. No prior vandal attack had ever inflicted destruction on such a scale as this, and even though security cameras were installed, they were out of operation for the past 2 years. The mayor of Mostar refutes the claim that the attacks were organized by local fascist groups, and instead blames the vandalism on individuals. Local police say there were no witnesses, so they were unable to launch an investigation. But some in the city claim that the inaction of police and authorities is part of the problem and evidence of a wider political force at play. Most recently, in March 2023, a local architect successfully pitched for the Partisan Memorial Cemetery to be listed among the cultural heritage group Europa Nostra's 7 most endangered monuments and heritage sites in Europe. This has been the latest attempt to attract international attention and possible rescue of the memorial from becoming more than a simple art installation or relic of a forgotten past.